Parent Network, a district-wide liaison organization of individual parent groups. Because of my involvement, parent representatives will now have direct access to the trustees and the administration in the form of bi-monthly meetings. This will, I'm sure, lessen the tension and the controversy when important issues arise. There are serious and controversial issues facing the present board, one of those being the question of busing students outside their catchment areas. There are ramifications to this question the board must consider, such as, what will the district gain by restricting students' access to other schools? Will the board take into account the destabilizing effect this may have on students being forced into a school which may not offer the courses they need for their future? Will this restriction lower or raise the quality of education in this district? I believe a strict transfer policy is what is needed, rather than simply a restriction on busing. Some other issues facing the board are the immediate need of Hume School for a larger gymnasium. Should this not have a higher priority on the capital funding request submitted to the provincial ministry? Teachers who have been kept on temporary status, even though they have served this district, in some cases for 5 years. I believe those teachers deserve better. The tendency of the board to react to situations only when they are in a crisis state, such as exists at W.E. Graham with a student population of only 27, and Socan Elementary, which is in a very sad state of disrepair. I believe having set policies will reduce the occurrence of crises, the resulting disruption, and save money in the process. I hope you, the public, will be asking specific questions about these and other issues tonight. Therefore, I will conclude by asking for your vote on November 15th, so I may continue working for education, this time from the other side of the board table. Thank you for listening.
All right, now we'll begin with questions from the panel. First, we will have one question each from each panelist. Then we will have a second question, and then we will have questions from the floor. Please remember that when you address your questions that the mic is not on if you want to use the mic to turn it on. And would you please, panelists, before you ask your questions, address it to one, two, or all of the panelists and then ask your question. We will begin with Frances Welwood from the University of Women.
Okay, I'll address my first question to all the candidates. It shouldn't take long to answer, so we could probably start in the same order in which you gave your introductory remarks. What plans or suggestions do you have for several unused school buildings in the district, notably North Shore School, the Willow Point School, and a school at Weimar? Would you consider rental, lease, or sale to private groups for educational or for recreational purposes?
Thank you. I can answer that. In as much as when schools are closed down, they're closed down, of course, with the permission of the parents. In fact, sometimes the parents almost demand you close them. They remain the property of the school board, and as a result, sort of have to stay in limbo, because at the time they're closed, we're not really sure as to when we will open them again. So it takes a while, and it has a lot to do with the condition of the building. North Shore, if you use that as an example, is a relatively new building compared with some of them up the valley that we had to deal with. Leasing is the easiest way for the board to allow use of their schools and still retain ownership for future need. To sell, it becomes a little more difficult because you must pass a resolution and convince the Ministry of Education that your board is unanimous in stating that they will never need that school again in the foreseeable future. This is a very difficult thing for the board to do. And as I say, it's not difficult if the building is pretty well run down and it has been replaced in the approximate area by a newer building. So my answer is that we would initially favor leasing.
Thank you. Jane, would you like to?
Yeah, well, actually, we have in this last little while, I think, finally organized some of the older schools in the Slocan Valley to different groups who have been using them over the last up to 10 years. And they're now taking them over on a permanent basis. They have bought them for $1 each. These are old buildings that community originally built and donated land to and that kind of thing. And they are now under community use. A similar arrangement is in the offing for the Weimar School. The Weimar Historical and Art Society, something like that, has applied to us. And they now have their charter approved. So, but as Harold said, it takes time. And Proctor, I think, have got an idea for the use of their school when the new school is built. The North Shore School is much harder because it's a really nice facility, and we have had groups apply to us who would like to rent it, but they haven't been willing to rent it at a rate that would make it worthwhile. We get some funding from the ministry to keep it boarded up. And as Harold said, none of us have crystal balls, and we don't know that we won't suddenly have an industry open here that would require the opening of that school. So I guess it depends rather on the condition of the schools. But if a group in the North Shore had a really excellent use they could put Willow Point to, I think we could be quite willing to look at that suggestion. The North Shore School would make an excellent private school, and a private school applied to us, but we weren't too keen to give them such a nice facility because every student we lose to a private school costs us money. So we offered to lend it to them at a very reasonable rent, but it was far too high for them. I've forgotten the figure, but it was exorbitantly high to them.
Yeah, would you like to address it?
Okay, the way I feel about it, it depends on the school. The chance of Weimar being utilized as a school is not likely at this point where declining population, with our declining population. Therefore, I could see selling that building so that someone else could use it, and we also would have that money in our coffers instead of having to pay for the upkeep of an empty building. Whereas the North Shore, with hopes maybe our population will increase within this city, that it could be used again as a school, and therefore I could see short-term leasing only, no sale.
And Alan?
My position is very similar to the rest of the people. If the building is in good condition and it can be leased and bring money into the school district, then I think that it should be leased. If the building is in poor condition and there is no foreseeable future for a school in that building, sale should be seriously considered. I would have a problem, though, with selling the schools for $1. Even though they go to a community organization, that money rightfully belongs to education and should be going to the education of your kids, rather than to a community organization, as good as it may be.
Thanks, Alan. All right, we will have our second set of questions, but perhaps if you don't have an individual to address your question to, Leah, maybe we could start from Ellen and work back down this time. Okay? Our second question, President of the NDTA, Leah Gray.
Thank you. I will address my question to each member. The first question. One of the major concerns of teachers in the province at this time is the lack of full bargaining rights for teachers. In 9 out of 10 provinces in Canada, teachers are allowed to bargain their own conditions of employment, whereas in BC, teachers have only the right to bargain salaries and bonuses. Teachers are not allowed to bargain any of their conditions of employment, and that is working conditions such as duty-free lunch hours, or children's learning conditions such as class size. So my question to you is, would you support legislation to allow teachers to bargain the same rights and conditions of employment as all other Canadian teachers?
Helen?
One of the things that I said earlier is that I would like to see teachers and their association have more input into negotiations. I think that limiting them to wages and benefits is not to the benefit of the kids and their education. I think that they should have much greater input. Conversation is a two-way street, and it would be a negotiation. Teachers would not get everything that they wanted, but I would certainly like to see them get more than they have now.
Thanks, Helen. Beth?
Okay. I feel we hire very responsible, competent teachers, and therefore I have no problem with the question of full bargaining rights. I feel that they have proven them to be responsible, and therefore can handle that as well as they handle anything else.
Jane?
Well, I agree too. My only problem is as we now stands, I don't know how we don't have from the province bargaining rights. Well, we have some bargaining rights as a board, but we have to go to binding arbitration, and then CSP and Mr. Peck have their final say. So I think it would have to be a lot more authority given back on both sides, not only to the teachers but to the boards. Because otherwise, I'm not sure who the teachers would be bargaining with. Maybe Victoria or something. I don't know how it would, as the law presently stands, I don't fully understand how it would work.
Thanks, Jane. Harold?
Yes, I feel that it's up to the teachers. If the teachers want it bad enough, I think they'll get it. And they should go out there and campaign hard for it and get legislation changed. Because in my opinion, and I've served for the board on many arbitration cases, that neither we like it nor do the teachers the way things are now. If they could be improved somewhat and be satisfactory to both sides, I wouldn't mind it. But I call it the mating dance of the swans. We have our certain dates that we must send certain letters, and other ones that we must acknowledge, and then all of a sudden we're forced together. And then there's the big list of things that the teachers want. Most of them are impossible to grant anyway, and they have to screen it with their own people, and then come down and then hammer it out with the board. And both sides feel that it is an unsatisfactory way of doing business. And if it continues like this, and there has been no improvement, I would support the teachers having the right to bargain and having legislation changed.
Thank you, Harold. All right, our third question from the Nelson Daily News, Kathleen Rodgers.
This is for everybody. What do each of you think in a way could be implemented in the way of drug or alcohol abuse education in the schools?
And who would you like to start with?
I'll just start with Alan.
All right, Alan.
We have professionals who do counsel people on drug abuse. We have the RCMP, we have the city police, who each have special detachments. I would like to see them come into the classes at a very early age. Peer pressure starts probably even before grade 1. And the kids are subject to that peer pressure for 12 years. And I think that right at the start, kids should be made aware of that problem. In the States, they're making kids aware of sexual abuse problems starting in grades 1, 2, and 3. And this subject is no different in its importance. I feel that it should start at that level. And we should have professional people in there to work with them and stop the peer pressure landslide effect.
Thanks, Ellen. Beth?
In the schools, we do have the Access Program, I believe it's called, and I think that could be enlarged upon as far as drug and alcohol abuse is concerned. I have to agree with Alan that I agree it should start earlier. We have the CARE program, which is child abuse from kindergarten to 3. I think drug and alcohol could be for the intermediate one, before they reach high school, before that peer pressure. And I think it should.
Thanks.
Jane?
There is a program, but the name has completely evaded me, but the Rotary Club sponsored some of our teachers to take it, and then Grace Wilson, I think, was the first teacher, and she did some training here, and it is at the intermediate school level. It may not be thorough enough, but it is a good little program. And there is, as you said, there is the Access, it's called Access Program at Trafalgar. But certainly it's something we could be working at more. It's an area that needs it.
Thanks, Jane. Harold?
Yes, I feel it's a very difficult thing to administer, and although it's as badly as it's needed, I'm afraid we have to go to outside sources for help. I don't think there are too many people within the school district that are qualified to handle such a subject. And another thing, I'm very much afraid it may go the way of sex education, which proved too difficult to handle properly. And in some cases it was a disaster. And many boards who pursued that area and encouraged it said they were sorry they did and wouldn't want to do it again. So it's such a touchy subject that whatever is done has to be researched very thoroughly and with experts.
Thanks, Harold. All right, we'll start with our second question from each panelist. Branson?
Once again, everyone should be able to give a relatively quick yes or no answer. And an existing school board policy encourages the formation of parent and home and school groups in each of the schools. Would you be in favor of making the formation of these parent school cooperatives mandatory?
We'll start with you, Harold.
Okay. No, I wouldn't be in favor of forcing a group together. I think that it would be rather superficial and be ineffective. I think the best ones are ones that are inspired by the individuals themselves. I do want to mention that in some cases, and it has been proved, that the principals themselves, I hope these principals are reaching retirement age, or if not already retired, but were not totally supportive of groups. In other words, where a group could have started, the principals thought of them more as a nuisance and therefore discouraged them. Now, this is fact, and those things are very difficult to police and most discouraging. I don't like to see that.
Okay, Harold? Jane?
Yes, I think parent groups should be encouraged, but no, I don't think they should be mandatory. I think they are very active in the elementary schools. Parents seem to become reticent to get involved as the children get older. And sometimes that's the fault of the children who say, don't you dare come and show your face in my school. I don't want to be put to shame by you turning up. And that's a real pity, but I do believe